right now, this very second. While you're watching this video, sipping whatever passes for coffee in your bunker, there are over 400 nuclear warheads sitting in underground silos across the American heartland. 400. Each one capable of turning a major city into a memory. Each one pointed at someone else's homeland. And each one painted with a giant bullseye that says, "Hit me first." But here's the thing nobody wants to talk about. Those silos aren't hidden on some secret military island. They're scattered across farms, small towns, places where people raise kids, grow wheat, and go to church on Sundays. And if you happen to live in certain states, congratulations! You're not just near a target, you are the target. Today, I'm going to show you the 7 US states that sit directly in what military strategists call the nuclear kill zone. Areas so strategically important that in any major conflict, they'd be hit first, hit hard, and hit repeatedly. We're talking multiple warheads per location, redundant strikes, the works. This isn't fear-mongering. This isn't some conspiracy theory cooked up in a basement. This is declassified reality. Pentagon documents, FEMA planning maps, the kind of stuff that makes defense analysts lose sleep. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why thousands of preppers are quietly selling their homes and relocating, where they're going, and whether you should be packing your bags too. So grab your Geiger counter and your sense of dark humor, because we're about to take a tour through America's nuclear sacrifice zones. Let's start with the state that has more nuclear targets per square mile than anywhere else on Earth. And yeah, I mean anywhere, on the entire planet. Rule number 1 of the New World: location isn't about the view, it's about the blast radius. Ground Zero Central, Montana and North Dakota pop quiz. What do Montana and North Dakota have in common? Low population density, beautiful landscapes, lots of cows, and oh yeah, 400 Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missiles buried under the prairie like the world's deadliest potatoes. Welcome to ICBM country, the heart of America's land-based nuclear deterrent, the place where Armageddon would literally begin. See, most people think of nuclear war as something that happens to cities. New York, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., sure, those are targets, but they're not the first targets. In military terminology, they're counter-value targets. Civilian population centers, the stuff you hit after you've already won. The first targets, those are counter-force targets, military assets, command centers, and most importantly, the enemy's nuclear weapons. Because if you can take out their missiles before they launch, you win. Game over. Checkmate in thermonuclear chess. And guess where America keeps the vast majority of its land-based nukes? Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana controls about 150 active ICBM silos. These things are scattered across 23,000 square miles of Montana farmland. That's an area bigger than some European countries, dotted with concrete bunkers containing missiles that can reach Moscow in 30 minutes. Then you've got Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota, another 150 silos. Plus, just to make things interesting, they also host B-52 bombers, the big nuclear-capable ones. So Minot gets a 2-for-1 special on the target list. And don't forget F.E. Warren Air Force Base down on the Wyoming-Nebraska-Colorado border. Another 150 silos. Different state technically, but same missile field concept. Here's the math that should keep you up at night. In any serious nuclear exchange, these missile fields wouldn't just get hit, they'd get saturated. We're talking multiple warheads per silo. Some analysts estimate the Great Plains would absorb over 1,000 incoming warheads in the first hour of a full-scale nuclear war. 1,000. Now you might be thinking, but wait, hardly anyone lives out there. It's just empty prairie, and you'd be right. Montana has about 1.1 million people. North Dakota has around 780,000. Combined, that's less than the population of Phoenix. But here's the dark irony. The low population is exactly why they put the missiles there. Fewer civilians to worry about. More room to spread out the silos. Except those people who do live there? They're the ones who would experience the opening minutes of nuclear war firsthand. And it gets worse. When you detonate hundreds of nuclear weapons on the surface, trying to crack those hardened silos, you're not just creating fireballs, you're creating fallout. Massive, continental-scale fallout. The prevailing winds in the United States blow from west to east. Always have, always will. So when those warheads hit Montana and North Dakota, that radioactive cloud doesn't just sit there. It drifts. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan. The entire upper Midwest becomes a secondary casualty zone. FEMA's own modeling suggests lethal fallout could extend 500 miles or more from a major strike on the missile fields. So congratulations if you live in Great Falls or Billings or Minot. you're residing in what nuclear war planners politely call a high-priority target zone. The rest of us just call it Ground Zero. But here's what most people don't realize. Even if you're nowhere near these missile fields, there's a place that would be hit even before the silos. A mountain bunker so important that it's been called America's underground Pentagon. The brain everyone wants to lobotomize. Colorado. Let me paint you a picture. Somewhere in the mountains west of Colorado Springs, there's a tunnel carved 2,000 feet into solid granite. Behind a set of blast doors that weigh 25 tons each sits the nerve center of American Air and Space Defense, NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command. If you've ever seen a movie about nuclear war, you've seen this place. Big screens, tense generals, someone saying, "We have incoming," while dramatic music plays. Except it's real, and it's exactly as important as Hollywood makes it look. Cheyenne Mountain Complex was built in the 1960s specifically to survive a nuclear attack. We're talking springs that let the entire facility bounce during an earthquake, blast valves that slam shut to keep out the shockwave, an independent water supply, enough food and fuel to operate for weeks completely sealed off from the outside world. The whole point was to create a command center that could take a direct hit and keep functioning. And for a while, it worked. The facility was designed to withstand a 30-megaton explosion. Problem is, warheads have gotten more accurate since then. Modern nukes don't need to be as big because they can land within a few hundred feet of their target. And when you can put a warhead right on top of something, even a mountain starts looking fragile. But Colorado's problems don't end at Cheyenne Mountain. Peterson Space Force Base sits right there in Colorado Springs. This is where Space Operations Command lives. The folks tracking every satellite in orbit, the ones who would detect an incoming missile attack. If you wanted to blind America in the opening minutes of a war, Peterson is on your list. Then there's Schriever Space Force Base, GPS Control Center. Every satellite navigation signal your phone uses to find the nearest coffee shop, controlled from here. Also controlled from here? The satellites that guide American nuclear missiles to their targets. Take out Schriever and suddenly a lot of precision weapons become very imprecise. Buckley Space Force Base rounds out the constellation. Missile warning systems, intelligence collection, more stuff the enemy would love to delete. All of this is concentrated in one metro area. Colorado Springs, population around 750,000. These are teachers and accountants and baristas who happen to live in one of the most target-rich environments on the planet. And just up the road, Denver. 2.9 million people in the metro area. Close enough to catch the party if Colorado Springs gets hit. Close enough that targeting planners might just add a few warheads to make sure. The geography makes it worse. Denver sits in a basin, mountains on one side, plains on the other. In a nuclear attack, that topography could trap fallout like a bowl. The Soviets reportedly allocated multiple warheads just for Cheyenne Mountain alone. Not one, multiple. Because if you're going to try to crack a mountain, you better be sure. So if you're living in Colorado for the craft beer scene or the skiing, just remember, you're also living in the bullseye for anyone who wants to decapitate American command and control. The brain everyone wants to lobotomize. Now, Cheyenne Mountain might survive a first strike. Maybe. But what happens after? That's where another state comes in. The place where America would actually command a nuclear war from. The Quiet Apocalypse Coordinator, Nebraska. When most people think of Nebraska, they think of corn. Lots and lots of corn. Maybe some football. The good life, as the license plates say. What they don't think about is the fact that Nebraska hosts the command center for the entire United States nuclear arsenal. Every missile, every bomber, every submarine. All of it coordinated from a base outside Omaha. Offutt Air Force Base, home of United States Strategic Command, STRATCOM. The folks with the nuclear briefcase. The ones who would execute the orders if a president ever decided to end civilization as we know it. This isn't some backup facility, this is the facility. The primary hub for planning, coordinating, and if necessary, launching America's nuclear forces. Every war plan, every target list, every simulation of how World War III might unfold. All of it runs through Offutt. The base also hosts the 55th Wing, operating RC-135 reconnaissance aircraft. These are the planes that fly along enemy borders, sucking up electronic signals, mapping radar installations, generally being nosy in ways that make adversaries nervous. But the real prize at Offutt? The National Airborne Operations Center, also known as the Doomsday Plane. These are E-4B Nightwatch aircraft, modified Boeing 747s that serve as flying command posts. If ground-based command centers get vaporized, the president and key military leaders can conduct a nuclear war from the air. These planes can stay airborne for days with refueling. They have every communication system known to man. They are quite literally designed to manage the apocalypse, and they're based in Nebraska, in the middle of America's breadbasket. Omaha itself is a metro area of nearly 1 million people. Nice city, good zoo. Warren Buffett lives there. It's also sitting right next to one of the highest value military targets on the planet. In any serious nuclear exchange, Offutt would be hit early and hit hard. The enemy's goal would be to disrupt command and control before America can fully respond. Take out STRATCOM and suddenly all those missiles in Montana and North Dakota are a lot less useful. They still exist, but the coordinated brain that tells them what to do is gone. The fallout implications here are similar to what we discussed with the missile fields. Flat terrain, prevailing westerly winds, anything that hits Offutt is going to spread east. Iowa, Illinois, maybe all the way to the Great Lakes. Plus, there's the agricultural angle. Nebraska is one of the most productive farming states in the country. Corn, soybeans, cattle. Feed the world stuff. Contaminate that farmland with fallout, and you're not just creating a local disaster. You're creating a global food crisis. But sure, it's just Nebraska. What could possibly go wrong? So we've covered where America commands its nuclear forces, but where does it actually store its nuclear weapons? There's one state that holds more warheads than most countries on Earth. Where Oppenheimer's ghost still haunts. New Mexico, July 16, 1945. A patch of desert called Trinity. The first atomic bomb explodes, and J. Robert Oppenheimer mutters something about becoming death, the destroyer of worlds. That was New Mexico, the birthplace of nuclear weapons. And 8 decades later, it's still the epicenter of America's nuclear infrastructure, not historically, currently, right now. As you're watching this, Kirtland Air Force Base sits on the southeastern edge of Albuquerque. Nice location, Sandia Mountains in the background, perfect weather for golf. Also perfect for storing the largest collection of nuclear weapons in the Western world. The exact numbers are classified, obviously, but estimates suggest Kirtland holds somewhere around 2,000 nuclear warheads. Some active, some in reserve, some awaiting dismantlement. All of them very much capable of ruining someone's day. This is the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center. Every nuclear bomb and warhead in the U.S. Air Force inventory flows through this place. Maintenance, certification, storage, distribution. It's like Amazon for atomic weapons. But Kirtland is just the warehouse. The real innovation happens up the road. Los Alamos National Laboratory, the place where the bomb was invented, still very much in the weapons business. Modern Los Alamos designs new nuclear weapons, maintains existing ones, and produces plutonium pits. Those are the cores of nuclear warheads. The actual fissile material that makes the boom. Sandia National Laboratories handles the engineering side. Every component that isn't the nuclear material itself. Triggering mechanisms, safety systems, the stuff that turns radioactive metal into a deliverable weapon. If Los Alamos is the brain, Sandia is the hands. And then there's White Sands Missile Range, the largest military installation in the United States. Bigger than some states. This is where they test everything. The Trinity site is actually inside White Sands. All of this sits in a state of about 2 million people. Albuquerque Metro is around 920,000. Nice city. Breaking Bad was filmed there. Here's the tactical problem with New Mexico. It's not just a target, it's a target you want to hit before the war starts. If you can destroy those stored warheads before they're loaded onto planes and missiles, you've just removed a significant chunk of America's nuclear capability. That means Kirtland isn't a second strike target. It's a first strike target, along with the laboratories. Along with anything that could reconstitute America's nuclear arsenal after an exchange. The desert environment adds another wrinkle. Dry conditions mean fallout particles stay airborne longer. They travel farther. The Rio Grande runs right through the state, meaning water contamination could spread into Texas and Mexico. New Mexico is where the nuclear age began. In a full-scale war, it might also be where a significant part of it ends. Still want to move to Santa Fe for the art scene? So that's the land-based stuff. The silos, the bunkers, the warehouses. But there's another leg of the nuclear triad that's even harder to destroy. And the submarines that carry those weapons, they all come home to one state. The silent service's not-so-silent home. Washington State. Somewhere in the Pacific Ocean right now, there's a submarine the length of nearly 2 football fields gliding silently through the deep. It's carrying 20 Trident II missiles. Each missile carries up to 8 nuclear warheads. Each warhead can destroy a city. That's one submarine. America has 14 of these things, and 8 of them call Washington State home, Naval Base Kitsap, specifically the Bangor Annex on Hood Canal. This is the largest nuclear weapons storage site in the country, possibly the world. We're talking over 1,000 nuclear warheads stored on submarines ready to launch or in nearby bunkers waiting to be loaded. The Ohio-class ballistic missile submarines based here are the ultimate insurance policy. Unlike land-based missiles, which have fixed locations that everyone knows about, submarines can be anywhere, deep, silent, invisible to satellites. The perfect second strike capability. If everything else gets destroyed, if every silo is cratered, if every bomber is shot down, those submarines are still out there, waiting, ready to end whatever country was stupid enough to start the war, which is exactly why the enemy would love to catch them at home. A submarine at sea is nearly impossible to find. A submarine in port? That's just a stationary target with an extremely valuable payload, and Bangor has 8 of them cycling through at any given time. The Strategic Weapons Facility Pacific handles the Trident missiles themselves, maintenance, storage, loading, the whole logistics chain. And then there's Jim Creek Naval Radio Station. Doesn't look like much, just a bunch of antennas in the forest. But this is one of the most powerful, very low-frequency transmitters in the world. VLF signals can penetrate seawater, which means Jim Creek can communicate with submarines even when they're submerged. In other words, this is how you tell a submarine captain to launch his missiles. This is how you authorize the end of the world. Take out Jim Creek, and suddenly those subs are a lot harder to coordinate. The population situation here is concerning. Seattle-Tacoma Metro has about 4 million people. Bremerton, the town right next to the base, has around 45,000. The entire Puget Sound region is densely populated and economically vital, and it's all within blast radius. The geography actually makes things worse. Puget Sound is essentially an inland sea, enclosed. If contamination gets into those waters, it stays there. Plus, Washington gets a lot of rain. When radioactive particles are in the air, rain brings them down, deposits them on the ground. It's called rainout. The Pacific Northwest likes to think of itself as removed from America's conflicts. In nuclear war planning, it's target number 1 for the submarine force. So that's the Pacific Fleet. But there's one more state that most preppers completely overlook. A state that doesn't have missile silos or submarine bases, but has something arguably even more critical. The factory that builds Armageddon, Texas. Everything is bigger in Texas, including the nuclear weapons infrastructure. About 35 miles northeast of Amarillo, in a stretch of panhandle so flat you can see tomorrow coming, sits the Pantex plant. You've probably never heard of it. Most Americans haven't. But here's what you need to understand. Every single nuclear weapon in the United States arsenal either came through Pantex or will come through Pantex. Every single one. This is the only facility in the country that assembles and disassembles nuclear weapons. The bombs on those B-52s, built at Pantex. The warheads on those Trident missiles, assembled at Pantex. The aging nukes that need refurbishment, sent to Pantex. The retired weapons being dismantled, taken apart at Pantex. There is no backup. There is no alternative location. If you want to destroy America's ability to maintain its nuclear arsenal, Pantex is the single point of failure. The facility also stores thousands of plutonium pits, the nuclear cores. Pantex has the largest collection of these in the country, sitting in reinforced bunkers in the Texas flatland. Think about this from an adversary's perspective. You can't hit every missile silo. You can't find every submarine, but you can hit the one place where all the weapons come from. Take out Pantex, and America might still have nukes, but it can't make new ones, can't maintain the old ones, can't respond to a protracted conflict. That makes Pantex a first strike priority. Not a city, a factory, a really important factory. But Texas has more problems. Houston, America's energy capital, 4th largest city in the country, home to about 7.3 million people, and absolutely critical to the national economy. About 30% of U.S. refining capacity sits in the Houston area. Petrochemical plants, LNG terminals, the infrastructure that turns crude oil into everything modern life requires. In nuclear war planning, energy infrastructure is a legitimate target. No fuel means no tanks, no planes, no ships. Houston represents a significant chunk of that fuel. Texas also hosts major military installations. Fort Cavazos, one of the largest military bases in the world. Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, handling cyber operations. Fallout patterns from a Pantex strike would drift east and southeast. Oklahoma City, Dallas, The Houston area would generate its own contamination concerns, potentially affecting the entire Gulf Coast. Texas likes to boast about its independence. In nuclear war, that independence means nothing. It's just another collection of targets on someone's map. And now, we come to the final state on our list, the most obvious one. But it's not just about politics. The concentration of military infrastructure here makes it perhaps the single most targeted region on the entire planet. Washington, D.C. and Virginia. You knew this was coming. The nation's capital, the seat of power. But Washington, D.C. isn't just symbolically important, it's operationally important. And that distinction matters when we're talking about nuclear targeting. The White House, not just a residence. The nerve center of executive authority, the place where the nuclear codes live, where the decision to retaliate would be made. In military terms, it's the ultimate decapitation target. Capitol Hill. Congressional leadership, the constitutional line of succession, another decapitation target. Every major federal agency, State Department, Treasury, Homeland Security, the bureaucratic machinery that keeps a superpower functioning, all concentrated in one metropolitan area. But here's where it gets really interesting. Cross the Potomac River into Virginia, and you find a concentration of military power that rivals anywhere on Earth. The Pentagon, largest office building in the world, headquarters of the Department of Defense. About 23,000 people work there on any given day. Every military decision, every war plan, every logistics calculation flows through this five-sided building. Target number one for anyone who wants to blind American military leadership. Naval Station Norfolk. This is where it gets scary. Norfolk is the largest naval base in the world, not the largest American naval base. The largest naval base. Period. Anywhere. On Earth. 75 ships call Norfolk home, including aircraft carriers, including submarines, including guided missile cruisers, the Atlantic Fleet headquarters. More firepower in one harbor than most countries have in their entire military. A successful strike on Norfolk would eliminate a significant portion of American naval power in minutes, not hours. Minutes. Then there's Langley, CIA headquarters, the intelligence apparatus that provides warning of attacks. Quantico Marine Base, FBI Academy. More military and intelligence infrastructure packed into a small geographic area. The population of the DC metro region is about 6.3 million. Federal workers, military families, contractors. In a full-scale nuclear attack, they would be among the first casualties. The fallout implications are catastrophic. The Chesapeake Bay is essentially a bathtub. Contamination would pool there. The prevailing winds would carry particles northeast along the I-95 corridor. Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York. The entire eastern seaboard becomes a secondary effect zone. And it's exactly why living in the DC area during a nuclear crisis is approximately the worst real estate decision you could make. The reality check. Time for some brutal honesty. Everything I just told you? It's based on publicly available information, declassified documents, academic analysis, think tank reports, which means if you know about these targets, so does everyone else. Russia knows, China knows. Your adversaries targeting computers have had this stuff programmed in for decades. The locations aren't secrets, they're strategic realities. But here's what keeps defense analysts up at night. We don't actually know how a modern nuclear war would unfold. The last time nuclear weapons were used in anger, it was 1945. 2 bombs, 2 cities, a completely different technological era. Today's arsenals are bigger, more accurate, and more numerous. The delivery systems are faster, the warning times are shorter, and the potential for miscalculation is ever present. Could missile defense systems intercept incoming warheads? Maybe some, not all. Definitely not enough to matter in a full-scale exchange. And here's the really uncomfortable truth. Even if you don't live in any of the 7 states I mentioned, you're not safe. You're just less likely to be directly vaporized. The economic consequences alone would collapse civilization. No power grid, no supply chains, no functioning government. The Mad Max scenario everyone jokes about, but nobody actually wants to live through. The states I covered are the primary targets, the sacrifice zones, but the secondary effects would touch everyone, everywhere, for generations. So what do you do with this information? That's actually the right question to ask. Every solution is temporary. Every tool fails. The only constant is adaptation. Where the smart money is moving. Now I know what you're thinking. You've just spent 20 minutes learning about all the places painted with nuclear bullseyes, and you want to know where it's actually safe. Here's the honest answer. Nowhere is completely safe in a full-scale nuclear war. That's just physics and human nature combining in the worst possible way. But there are areas with significantly fewer strategic targets, better natural protection, more distance from the primary impact zones. Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, the northern tip of New England, minimal military presence, no major strategic targets, far from the eastern seaboard population centers that would draw warheads. Cold winters, but at least you'd be alive to complain about them. Oregon, specifically the interior, away from the coast and Portland. The Cascade Mountains provide a natural barrier against fallout drifting from Washington state. Low population density, good agricultural potential. Idaho, this one's become popular with the prepper community for a reason. Mountain terrain, sparse population, far from major targets. The American Redoubt movement has been promoting this region for over a decade. Land prices have jumped 40 to 60% since 2020. West Virginia, Appalachian Mountains create natural barriers. Low population density, strong community traditions. Far enough from DC to avoid the worst of the immediate effects. Upper Michigan, the part of Michigan that sticks up above Wisconsin, isolated, surrounded by Great Lakes freshwater. Very few people, which means very little strategic interest. Now, here's what these places have in common. They're not just far from targets, they're far from infrastructure, far from supply chains, far from everything that makes modern life comfortable. If you're thinking about relocating, you need to be honest about what you're giving up. Convenience, career opportunities, the ease of urban life. What you're gaining is distance, time, the chance to implement your preparations before the fallout arrives. That trade-off isn't for everyone, but if you want options, these regions offer Plan B, and in the nuclear calculus, options are all you've got. The final punch, 7 states, hundreds of targets, millions of people living as coordinates on someone's war plan. Now you know, not to scare you. Fear without information is useless. Knowledge is the foundation of preparation, and preparation is the foundation of survival. The odds of full-scale nuclear war are still relatively low. Deterrence has worked for 80 years, but preppers don't plan for probably fine. We plan for possibly catastrophic. If you're sitting in one of these kill zones right now, you have choices to make. Maybe you stay. Maybe you have roots too deep to pull up. Or maybe you start looking at maps differently. Your life, your circumstances, your calculation. If this video helped you see the bigger picture, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, and drop a comment below. Which state surprised you the most? Are you in a kill zone? What's your plan? I'm Fallout Raccoon, and remember, location isn't about the view, it's about the blast radius. Stay prepared, stay informed, stay alive. The wasteland is coming, might as well be ready.